Hi, so welcome, Rahim Hirji. You're the founder of Superskills. And as I understand it, Superskills is an advisory practice that's built around human capabilities that AI can't replace. And you've spent 3 years now talking to more than 200 organizations on this. What is it that you're seeing here that most people are missing?
The thing that I'd say is that most companies have got a process in place. They're thinking about AI. They know what they want to do. They say when you go to any company and you say, "Have you got an AI strategy?" You say, "Yes, we've got all of the things covered off." And they'll say that they've got a process. They're looking at process and automating it and changing it. They're saying that they are looking at cost reductions and looking at the opportunities from that area. And then they're looking at revenue opportunities and new products, new services, and things of that nature. And I've historically come from the edtech industry, and I watched this whole layer of edtech rebuild itself around things like AI lesson plans and things like that. These things are all legitimate, but I think in my research is I think that they're missing this whole thing, and it irks me a little bit because there's this fourth dimension, which is human capability. I think it's the game changer. It sits across all of the AI prongs or pillars that you might have. And the way that AI is being perceived by leaders is black or white. You're either on the boat with it or you're off. And you think about the humans or the employees within an organization is they're putting them into two camps. So I see it very differently. I think that people can become more human in this moment and not less, and they can lean into the different set of skills, the super skills that I've got, curiosity, change readiness, empathy. And these are the super skills that my book is based on. But the game changing question, to answer your question, that almost nobody's asking is, what does an organization need its people to become to succeed in the new world? And I don't think that people think about the human bit first. They think about the tech first. And I think that's a mistake, because this is the first time that technology has come for our brains, right? We've lived through multiple different eras. When every other era came for different things, it came from our, hands and tools and things like that. It came for processing speed. And this one is coming for the thing that we thought would make us irreplaceable. And we're still thinking about it as a tool problem. And I think CEOs are still thinking about it as a tool problem. Maybe they're evolving somewhat. But the thing I'd say is we need to reframe this AI strategy process that organizations are going through right now as a thinking problem. And then I think the conversation will shift.
Okay, so there's quite a lot to unpack in that. I think maybe if we just start with what you mean by human capability here. So you put emphasis on the need to focus on the human and the human capability side of things rather than, process transformation, cost reduction, revenue upside,
Yeah.
right? So what does that actually mean to you? And I know you've sort of identified and listed 7 skills, but in just pure layman's terms here, what are you talking about when you're talking about things that are sort of human capability versus anything else?
So just to clarify, I do think those three areas for AI are still important. I just think that the fourth one needs to be in the conversation. But let me talk to you about let me give you an example. So back in the day, when I was a lot younger, when you go and get insurance, I'd go to um, my insurance broker, and he worked out of his garage in his house. And in his garage, it was quite cold. He had a heater. He had this desk. He had this big leather chair, and he had this tin, this biscuit tin with 1 penny coins in them, because insurance back in the day cost 1999, I think. And he thought his value was in writing out the name and all the details in the form that he would go and post off. There would be this blue ink that he would go and put into these forms. And he thought that his value was this pen and the fact that he was talking to us and things of that nature. But the real thing that I saw in him was trust. I trusted him. I'd go back to him every year. And this guy's is long gone and passed away. But the thing I'd say is it's really about, it's about the value that humans bring, and people forget about that value. And there is this value in this work, and you have no idea what your value is at this point in time, because everything has been thrown off. So it's about taking a step, and everyone's got different values. So it's about taking a step back and saying, this is where my value lives as a human. And as an organization, you might look at it and say, here's where we should be leaning in on, and not just taking these fast steps away. I mean, I've been a consultant across multiple different industries, and there was one I spoke to a bank recently. I have a number of kind of companies in financial services, and they said to me that they were very pleased that they'd automated part of their research function. And yeah, 5 years ago, before all of ChatGPT, nobody was saying we need to automate research for cost savings. No one was saying that, right? No one was asking that question. And AI showed up, and they said, "Oh, we could do this because we can get all of the data now from ChatGPT or Claude or whatever else." And they've re-engineered their function to kind of do that. But for me, I said this is a big mistake, because research is where someone's actually using their brain to ask the right questions and to decide what the business does next. So, what they were doing was saying, okay, well, we're going to outsource this bit to the machine. And that's exactly where I think individuals and organizations need to elevate and not strip out what they were doing. Nobody asked that cost reduction, and it just happened. And that's
What was the outcome? What was the cost of doing that to that organization? What was it that they missed by doing that?
so what they were doing is they let's assume they had a team of 10, right, which I think is roughly what they had, and they reduced that down to a team of 2. So they had missed out half of the questions that they used to ask before. They weren't asking now, because they lost all of the wisdom from people who've been in that industry and seen different waves in the past. And secondly, there was no one really to have look at the oversight, to make sure that the AI is covering the right areas, because they didn't really have all of the know-how on what's going on. And subsequently, they're kind of bringing some of that team back, because they realize they're missing a trick a little bit. But I think what happens is AI, it comes in as a strat. It comes in as procurement, right? And then it gets rolled out through tech or IT, and then it gets measured in these different metrics. It might be, licenses that are activated, or how many times people use AI, but it never really gets to the CEO's desk, right? So the CEO says, "Oh, we're doing AI," and then it doesn't really sit there with the CEO. It doesn't go back and say, "Are we asking the right questions?" Because he just continue doing the business. And you can't lead with what technology can do. You have to lead with what humans who want to operate it, and the direction that you want to go in, and make that decision. And so when you think about these things, I think we've forgotten what jobs are actually for. The thing that AI cannot take, and this is where we go back to the human capability thing, is it cannot take, the relationships, right? I cannot take this trust. And you go back to the garage broker. If he was still alive today, I know that you can do all of these comparisons online, and that's how we usually do things. But if he was alive today, and I have this weird situation around my insurance, I'm going to go to him, because it doesn't get dealt with by the insurance engine.
So trust is clearly one of those elements. And I think you give an example in a recent piece of an agent who kind of sends a follow-up to a bereaved client on schedule, because nobody flagged the bereavement. And then, obviously that didn't have good consequences. Like for a mid-market business where oversight kind of sits with someone who's already doing 3 other jobs, how do you guard against that kind of failure? Like how do you make sure you protect against something like that?
So, everyone has these different mechanisms. This thing around the bereaved client, and it's not really necessarily about the bereaved client, but it's the thing that terrifies me a bit, is this incomplete data, right? So there's this, and I think that's where significant errors are going to happen as we take steps forward. So you walk into this world where the AI is the default and it's not the exception, right? And the human stuff is the context that the AI can't know or feel. It doesn't know the relationship. It doesn't know the conversation that you haven't recorded because it was inappropriate to record it. It doesn't know the gut feeling that you feel because you've spoken to them a number of times in person. It doesn't know any of that data, and there's no field for it, right? There's no field for it on the system or the data. There's no dashboard for that type of stuff. And so the guard the guard for that is not more kind of oversight hours. I haven't got time for doing this on a more regular basis. But it's about asking asking one question of every workflow. Where in this process does a human need to be present? For that are kind of dashboard can't explain. Is it at the beginning? Is it at the end? Is it when 4 or 5 different things come together? Is it before you send things out? Um, where could things kind of, I don't know what the word is, coalesce in the way that the agent won't catch? So I don't think it needs to be everywhere. I think it's just at one specific point in time. It's going to be different in different industries. But I see this as like, this oversight which is this new era or new area that humans are going to go into. I think it's kind of currently underrated in this new world, right? So this oversight of what's actually happening.
Mm.
And everyone talks about acceleration. They talk about deployment. They talk about adoption, but no one talks about oversight as a discipline. And there's a level of wisdom to it. When you do talk to organizations, they say, yeah, we've got oversight on everything we're doing, but oversight is only useful if you have the power to intervene. Right? So intervention is what makes you human in the loop, not just witnessing the information. And if you can only monitor the information that is there or what is happening, you're not overseeing it. You're just like a friend to the agent, right? Real oversight is when you can ring the alarm and you can stop the machine and say, no, don't do this. Something's not quite working. We need to really look at this in a different way. And there's this kind of level of authority that people who are this new kind of managerial role of oversight is gonna come into fruition.
So where do you think a mid-market leader might start with this knowledge or this understanding or lens that you're bringing onto it? What do you think is the first thing they should be doing? Is it some sort of audit of what they're doing already and sort of looking for, where there needs to be human in the loop? What would you recommend that they start with?
It's obviously very, very different on different industries. I mean, I'd say that you need to reposition for this new world, right? The thing I say to clients is this kind of thought experiment of sorts. So you've got to look at, let's assume that AI takes 80% of what you're doing off your plate tomorrow, right? Don't worry about your job. Everyone goes, oh, if it's going to take 80% of my job, I'm going to have my job, or is the organization going to be here? Let's assume all of those things are all okay. I would say let's assume that happens, right? So 80% of the tasks are done by agents now. What would you do with your time? And most leaders in kind of mid-market companies are saying, well, I do more of what's left because that's what I know what to do. And I think that's completely the wrong answer. And we're moving from this old world of knowledge management, knowledge thinking, right? So I think that's old school thinking. It was a world where productivity was highly regarded. If you have more outlooks which were dinging, you have more slacks that were pinging, you'll be doing lots of work. And I just call that busy work. And I think we've been mistaking that productivity for quite a long time. So I'd say that you'd look at what you're doing right now and you start to protect your thinking. You'd say, once a week, you'd say, I'm going to sit down as an individual and then come together as an organization. And this is what I'm going to be doing for the following week and in using that time for thinking time. And I remember being in organizations where people would block this time off. And I thought, no, that's a bit arrogant. They've got time to think. And I had a very busy diary and doing the stuff. In fact, they were the ones who were right. I was the one who was wrong. But because the thinking time is what's actually going to become really important as you sit down. And we should stop saying, I mentioned it already, human in the loop, but it's really about saying about human first. That's what we need to kind of say. How do you solve problems? So you might sit down with a problem. So here's my book that I sit down with. And when I've got a problem, instead of going brain to fingers to keyboard, which is what most people do, or starting to do with prompting, I start writing first and start scribbling and My writing is not very good, but I start scribbling to try and figure out those
So
problems.
it's kind of a practical takeaway then. Just make sure you protect that authorship time or that thinking time in your diary, right? So your AI free, computer free space to be actually contemplating and thinking things through as a human before diving straight into ChatGPT and sort of problem solving with ChatGPT. Is that how you might think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, we talked about this, this not knowledge workers and that, and I think it is moving from this world of execution, right, to authorship. And
And you maybe spend a minute on what that actually means.
yeah, sure. So I think for the last, yes, since I've been in work, so 25, 30 years, we've been living in this world where execution was really important. And I used to be I used to say I'm a strat guy, so I can come up with great ideas and stuff. I'd go to interviews and say, well, can you actually execute? Can you do the stuff? And can you prove that you've done it? Where's the data? And that was this, this knowledge economy that we were in. And so, if you could research it, if you could build it, if you could format it, if you could coordinate it, optimize it, if you could make it programmatic, right? You'd be in a great position, and that was a great position to be in for the last 30 years. Now we're in this world where agents do all of that, and the thing is, what they can't do is what's worth executing, which is different. They can't set the direction. They can't
Judgment
weigh up
piece you talk
competing
about.
values or author intent. Sorry.
It's the judgment piece that you're talking about.
Absolutely. So it's the being able to make that decision. I think it becomes really, really important in these coming years. I mean, I don't, some of the organizations that I work with and the ones that I've been involved in, we used to have Friday or Thursday nights or Thursday afternoon all hands meetings, right? And then every week you'd have this manager who would be, she would be pulling the numbers, reformatting charts, chasing three people on. I get Slack to update bits and pieces, and that's changing now because the agent can do that. And then when you get to authorship, it's actually you have that data, so the conversation changes rather than collecting the data and doing that stuff, the busy work. The stuff becomes, and the important stuff becomes, the authorship is like, what are we going to do with that data? What are the questions that we are going to take forward?
Yeah, so it's the thinking and the judgment.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we haven't actually defined the 7 capabilities that you talk about.
Yeah, so very quickly. Firstly, you could see them all on superskillsbook.com, and where you can pre-order my book. And they're all listed there. There's more information about them. But the 7 super skills are curiosity, change readiness, big picture thinking, principled innovation, empathy, global adaptability, and the augmented mindset. So they're all important. They all work in a specific order. The 2 I think that are really important for mid-market companies is curiosity and the augmented mindset. And curiosity is the first one that I have on the list, and the augmented mindset is the last one, and they all come together in this kind of arc. And I'd put them in that order. So I think that curiosity is really important, and being ready for change is really important, and having empathy is really important. But the reason why I mention curiosity is that people come back to me. Actually, they say to me, everyone says that they're curious. No one says I'm not curious, right? And so that's an obvious one. And I said, well, it's not an obvious one because we all think we're curious. I think curiosity is the skill that's most under threat right now because of AI.
How does one be deliberately curious then?
S-
Because that's what you're asking people to do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Now go back to that piece of paper because I think this is going back and asking the questions yourself before going into the AI. Because what we're doing is we're tricking ourselves to thinking that we've come up with the answers, right? And you're losing the muscle of being curious and asking the questions of every single thing that we are doing. It's more important to be asking the questions before you get to the AI than it is to say, oh, here's these great questions, and I'm going to take this to my manager, or I'm going to take this to my team and say, here are some things that we should be doing. And I've come up with this stuff, and I think we're tricking ourselves to say that we're doing that. So that's the thing is there's this thing around following through on your questioning before you get to AI, and having a hypothesis before you get to AI.
So is it kind
Is
of like a meta thing? So where a question pops into your head and before typing it straight into Claude or GPT, you ask yourself the question about a question. So it's like, why am I asking this question in the first place? What more should I be thinking about regarding this question before I interrogate ChatGPT? Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. I think we should take a step back, and it is quite a meta type situation, but it's like taking that step back and noting those things down. Why was I thinking about that in the first place?
Mm.
Was I thinking about that because I was influenced by an algorithm or something else that I read? Or is that something that actually I think and is something that's forming in my head and I need to form it myself before I have my own hypothesis?
I love
And
that.
that's
And it's come on to, I guess, the augmented
sure.
mindset. I mean, I know there's kind of an arc, as you say, to get from curiosity to augmented mindset. But what do you mean by augmented mindset? What is an augmented mindset to you?
So I'll, in the interest of time, I'd say it's human plus AI. And human plus AI is more powerful than humans alone, or is more powerful than AI alone. And hopefully, the things that we've talked about today make that clear. But the example that I bring is Tony Stark and Iron Man, right? So Tony Stark isn't great because of the suit. He's great because he decides when to wear it and when not to wear it, right? So the suit gives him this like extra capabilities, these superpowers, and he brings intent. He brings the judgment that we're talking about. And he essentially brings the whole game, right? And crucially, he makes the decision when to wear it and when not to wear it. And you see that in the film. You'll remember any of these Avenger films with him wearing the suit as Iron Man, and you'll remember him wearing not wearing the suit as well. And that's really what the new world is going to be like. When do you think and use your brain and use your capability and use your judgment? And when do you say, hey, I'm going to
In the
press the
kind
button?
of the agentic future, don't lose your agency kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's we are into this world where you know you'll read Andre Karpathy's
Mm.
blogs and his videos, and he talks about this 10-year arc where we are in this agentic world now. It's not a 1-year play, it's a 10-year play. And if we are in this 10-year play, and this is the new world, it's not like something it's not fly by night. We've got something else. We've got basically AI and AGI. It's AI agentic and AGI happening. What do? If you know that's the case, you come back and you say, well, if all this work is being taken care of, if all of this stuff and this capability is being done, we need to be more human. And that's the reason why I do the work that I'm doing.
How do we distill this into something practical? Like, if you had to give advice right now to, say you're sitting in front of a C-suite team at a mid-market business and they are, like most people now, grappling with the transformation that we're seeing in the AI world, and they're trying to figure out what to do next. What is your advice to, given everything that you've learned on your journey so far?
So there's a couple of things I'd say is it's not about status updates anymore, because the status updates happen, and they should be happening. Those are the things that you need to do. The question is asking more questions. What questions do you need to ask that you could be doing? And there was a company that I was working with, and they, instead of having a status update meeting, they were saying they would vote on the questions that were most important to the business going forward. And the reason why they were doing that was because they didn't know what the world was going to turn into. And so the North Star that a company's had, which was 5 or 10 years out, you have your strat plans and you say, these are the things that we're going to be doing. Those things have changed because the world is moving so quickly that North Star is going to come in 2 years' time, and therefore you need to start pivoting a bit quicker. So I would say to sit down and say, look, this world is moving really quickly in our industry, and looking at our competitors who are going to have access to the same kind of technology. What is it that we need to look at from our individuals in our organization that's going to differentiate us amongst the competition, and sit there and do that? The other thing is, back in the late 90s and early noughties, you'd have these X teams, which would, these are the people who are kind of coming into organizations, or you pick the people who are most au fait with the technology or the strategy of the business, and can get stuff done. And get those people together to really energize the organization, because this is about changing all organizations, right? So especially mid-market ones who are right in that point where they could grow in a massive way, but they could also die off in a massive way, right, quite quickly. So get the people who are going to spark this change, sit there with them and kind of say, this is your new remit for the next year or 2 years, and make that change happen.
So make a form an X Labs, an X division in your company for
Absolutely. I think they are.
entrepreneurs in the company, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, and bring those. It's not just one person; it's multiple people with different mindsets coming together who have a shared feel for what's going on in the market, going on in industry of AI and the specific competition, but also have got this like human capability that they're not by the tech that's within the organization, but they're thinking outside of the box and what's actually possible.
Wonderful. Raheem, this has been super fascinating conversation and look forward to seeing your next endeavor. So remind us again. So your book, Superskills, just come out, right? And
Yeah,
what
so
do you
it's
want?
available for pre-order at superskillsbook.com. It's coming out on the July the 3rd. If you order it now, then you'll get all these pre-order bonuses. So you can buy it from Amazon and then just register on the site.
And where did people find you?
LinkedIn is my kind of main place. So go and find me, Rahim Hirji, Hirji, and or search for Superskills and you'll find me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Raheem. Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks so much, Terry.
Cheers.